happen. And so I'm believing something good is about to happen. So I'd like to open in prayer, and then we'll get started this morning. Heavenly Father, we're just grateful for your house. We're grateful for this place. Lord, this body of believers is not gravitating around a person. It's gravitating around you. It's gravitating around the sacrifice that you've made. And it doesn't matter who is on the stage and who's not on the stage any given week, Lord, because you are always on stage. And we just pray today, Lord, that your message would be communicated clearly. I'm nothing but a broken vessel. But we just pray, Lord, that your will would be done through the message today, and that you would touch hearts and lives. And we really want to lift up the whole Pringle Wake family in prayer today, Lord, that you would just be with Granny Pringle and the family around her, and just help those doctors to know what they're doing, and help everybody else to just find peace in seasons of difficulty. And we could all pray for that, Lord, that you would give us peace in seasons of difficulty. And we pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. It's one of these things where sometimes you've got a message and the title doesn't really work in until like almost to the end. But when my wife showed me the title screen that she'd made up, I was like, oh, that's too cool to wait. So I'm just going to go ahead and just like, it's like Christmas, like I just can't wait to tell you what your present is. So I just want you to know the title of the message, go ahead and put it up, babe, is Not Without a Fight. Isn't that cool? I just think that's cool. I like the gloves and everything. So Not Without a Fight is the message title this morning. And it's not going to seem real obvious where I'm starting with this, but if I asked for a show of hands and said, who would like to receive a blessing from God? I think probably you don't have to do it. I think most people's hands would go up, right? Who doesn't want to receive a blessing from God? Of course, we all want to be blessed. But I want to kind of take that idea about blessings and sort of maybe kind of look at it from a different angle. But before I do that, we've got to have some background information. I never like to assume that anybody knows or remembers all the little Sunday school type things. I grew up without a Sunday school. I didn't go to Sunday school. So a lot of this stuff, I had to pick it up as I went. And sometimes preachers take these things for granted. I don't want to do that. So just bear with me for a second if you know this stuff. But the way that the history of the people of Israel goes, and the way that property gets handed down from one person to another kind of goes like this. So at the beginning of time, God's people was just everybody, right? I mean, whomever. And for a couple thousand years, there's no real definition. God doesn't draw a circle around a group of people and say, these are my people, which makes sense because you would think all people would be God's people, would you not? And so we know about Adam, and we know about his son Cain, and we know about Abel, and we know about Seth. But then the Bible jumps on forward to Noah, and that's a 1,500-year jump. And it's not that, God didn't forget about those people. It's not that he didn't care about those people. It's just this is where the story kind of picks up and starts to change. And so after Noah, there's another period of time, and about 2000 BC is when a guy named Abraham comes on the scene, and Abraham is who the focus of the story kind of becomes, because Abraham is going to be the father of many nations, and the leader. I always think of, oh brother, where art thou? The pater familias of this group of people that is going to be the Israelite people. And God, I want to be clear about this too. If you've ever wondered, like, why did God choose a group of people and say, you get to be my people, and everybody else, you get to just like go to war and kill them and destroy them, and I don't care about them, I just care about this group of people? It's really not the way it was. The world is full of sin. The world is broken. The world is full of people who don't want to have anything to do with God, and God is fully aware of that. And he told the nation of Israel, I want to raise you up as a nation of priests. Priests don't preach to priests, right? Everybody doesn't need to be a preacher. So what good is a whole nation full of priests but to spread the word of God to the rest of the world? That's what they were supposed to do. They just never could get their act together enough to be able to take on that role. So you've got this group of people. Abraham, of course, is a guy that we look up to, and we say, oh, he's Father Abraham. He was a really cool guy, but he wasn't cool all the time. He did some things that were not cool. He lied about who his wife was and got himself into some hot water on more than one occasion. And then, very famously, God gives him this promise. He says, Abraham, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to make you a mighty nation. Nations will be born of you. You are going to be the father of my people. But of course, that requires him actually becoming a father in the first place. And Abraham gets a little bit impatient about that because, to be fair, God makes the promise and he has to wait like 15 years before anything happens at all. And God just at 15 years reminds him, I didn't forget, I am going to make you a father of many nations. And Abraham's like, maybe God was thinking I should help him. Maybe I'm supposed to help God do this thing that he wants to do. And so he and Sarah, it's actually Sarah's idea, but they come up with this plan that he's going to have a child through Sarah's handmaid. And that just makes a big mess of things. Abraham was not content to wait to receive the blessing that God had promised him, so he tried to kind of hurry things along, and he made a mess. And in fact, what he made is a mess that we're still dealing with today, because the descendants of Ishmael, his first son, the Muslim people trace their lineage back through Ishmael, and it's just this constant contention. Thanks a lot, Abraham, for not being patient. I mean, he did a lot of cool things, so I can't really hate on him too bad. But that kind of caused us some trouble. So now Abraham has more than one wife, and he's got kids causing problems with his other kids, and it's a big problem. He has Isaac, his second son, which is his first son with Sarah, which is the son that was actually promised by God. But this kind of creates a little bit of a problem, because in Hebrew law, the first son receives all the blessings. The first son gets the blessing from God. The first son gets the property rights. When dad dies, it's the first son that's going to inherit everything. And so rightfully, by law, that should be Ishmael. But we know what God says is, no, that's not my promised son. My promised son is right here. That's Isaac. So you are going to bless Isaac. And so when Isaac grows up, he's maybe learned from dad's mistakes a little bit. Isaac takes only one wife. That's good. That's the way to do it. Isaac takes only one wife, and then he doesn't give birth. We understand how this works. His wife gives birth to two sons. They're twins. They're born at the same time. And it's these twins that are going to become the focus of our story today. But you had to get that other stuff to make sure that this made sense to you. So when he has these twins, it is prophesied at the time of their birth, Mama hears a word from the Lord that says, the younger brother is going to be the one to receive God's blessings. Once again, we've got this odd situation where it's not the first son who's going to be the one to receive the blessing. It's going to be the second son. So in Genesis chapter 25, verse 21, says this: Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. The Lord was receptive to his prayer, and his wife Rebekah conceived. But the children inside her struggled with each other. And she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two peoples will come from you and be separated. One people will be stronger than the other. The older will serve the younger." So there it is. There's the prophecy right there that this is the way this is going to work. So we already know this. When her time came to give birth, there were indeed twins in her womb. The first one came out red-looking, covered with hair like a fur coat. That's a fun thing to think about. And they named him Esau. And after this, his brother came out, grasping Esau's heel with his hand. So he was named Jacob, and Isaac was 60 years old when they were born. Okay. This may be familiar to you. Esau and Jacob, and their names actually tell us quite a bit about them. Esau in Hebrew is Esau, and what it means is, like, we've always said hairy, like Esau means hairy, but it doesn't just mean like hairy, it actually means rough, so like coarse, which could be hairy, like rubbing a goat, which we find out later is a pretty good way to simulate Esau. Goat hair is rough, so that makes sense. But it doesn't just mean hairy rough. It can also mean rough, like to be handled roughly. And if you know, as you come to learn more about Esau's story, that makes a lot of sense. Rough and being handled roughly, that kind of is typical of him. And then we have Jacob. Yaakov is the Hebrew for that. And what it means is, and we've, probably heard before, it's like heel grabber. And that is true, which that's a little on the nose, right? Like he literally is grabbing his brother's heel, so he comes out, they name him heel grabber. But it also, again, it's Hebrew, it's complicated. It means several things. So it can mean heel grabber, but it also means to overreach. Like he's stepping outside of his authority and reaching for something else. It means supplanter, to take someone down and put yourself in their place. And that puts Jacob in a pretty nice package. So we've got these two boys who are already kind of having issues, and they've just been born. And we don't know any more about them until they're much older. And there's the account that probably, if you went to Sunday school, you probably heard the story at some point where Esau sells his birthright for a bowl of soup, because apparently he's not a real futures kind of guy. He's not really planning ahead. So in Genesis 25:29, it says this. Once, when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the field exhausted. And he said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stuff, because I'm exhausted." That's why he was also named Edom. Okay. Jacob replies, "First, sell me your birthright." That escalated quickly. I mean, who does that? "Brother, I'm hungry. Can you feed me?" "Sure. How about that birthright?" Like, what? Where did that even come from? Why was that even on his mind? Why was it on his mind? Because it was on his mind all the time. It's all he could think about. I have to wonder if he is such a mama's boy. He so clearly is. Jacob is so clearly a mama's boy, and Esau is so clearly daddy's boy. And I have to wonder if Mama and him were having a conversation at some point in his upbringing, and she said, "Now don't tell anybody this, but you're going to be the one that God's going to bless. You're going to get all the bless." Maybe she told him that. And there's more than one way to take that as a person. You could hear that your mom telling you, "Oh, you're going to be the one who's going to receive all the property. You're going to be the one who's going to be blessed by God." And you could take that and be like, "Oh man, that's a lot of responsibility. We'll just, maybe mom's crazy. We'll see how it goes. For now, I'm just content to just be me." And that's one way to take that news. The other way to take it is, "Oh, the blessing's mine, is it? Mine, all mine," which appears to be how Jacob took it, because it's all he's thinking about. He's thinking all the time, how am I going to get this blessing? How am I going to get this blessing? And it's consuming his thoughts to the point that when his brother comes in and says, "Dude, I'm so hungry, I feel like I'm going to die." "Oh, desperate, are you? You want to trade?" Wow, taking advantage of your brother when he's down. How about that? That is something. There's a little confusing point in there where it says that's why Esau gets the name Edom, because he eat them up. No, that's not why. That's not what that means. I'm sorry. I apologize. That was the dentist coming out in me. No, I think I promise this is the last Hebrew word thing I'm going to bring up, but it's Adam, but not the name Adam, like Adam. That means mankind. Adam means red. And so Esau's name, like his nickname, was Red. And actually, you might think it was because he was born all red and hairy, but the Bible is really clear. It's not. We don't call him Red because he was born red and hairy. We call him Red because when he came in, the stew that Jacob was cooking was red. And when Esau sits down, Esau. I said that right. When Esau sits down, he actually says, "Give me some of that red." That's actually what it says. That's the Hebrew. "Give me some of that red." And that, I guess, means really, really red stew. And that's what we remember him for. Not that he was born all red and hairy, but that he sold his birthright for a pot of that red. What a legacy to have behind you, that you sold your birthright for a pot of soup. So what's weird about this is Jacob feels the need to take advantage of his brother to get a blessing he has already been promised by God. How messed up is that? Just let it happen, man. Like, why do you got to be like that? Why you got to be so rude? Okay. By the way, no, let's just move on. That was my by the way about the red. I saw my note and I forgot what I was doing. So he does sell his birthright. Genesis chapter 25:32 says, "Look," says Esau, "I'm about to die. What good is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me first." Woo! What a dark little dude he is. I mean, he's just like, well, sell me your birthright. Okay, well, what good's a birthright to me? Swear it, before he pours it out. Okay. Swear to me first. So he swore to Jacob and sold his birthright to him. So our next view of these troubled twins is at Dad's at death's door. Isaac is just about gone. And he, in his final moments, he's like, oh, you know what I could really go for is some of that venison, some of that game, some of that good fresh meat that Esau brings me. Because Esau was his boy. Now, Mama is in the kitchen, and she overhears this. She is clearly in on it, right? Like she and Jacob been conspiring all along. I don't know if it was her whispering it in his ear when he was little that got him on this train. And I don't know if maybe he just had that in him all along to just be this kind of conniving dude. But he has influenced Mom, or Mom has influenced him. And they're definitely in on it together, because as soon as she hears this, man, before I die, I just want some of my son's good, fresh meat. I want some of that. And she goes, Jacob, get in here. Your dad, he's going to bless your brother. Your brother's going to go out and hunt. But here's what we're going to do. You go get me a goat, and we'll kill it, and I'll dress it up. I can cook it up so good, your dad will never know the difference. He can't hardly taste anymore anyway. And so I'll cook him up something good, and we'll make him think that you are Esau, and you can get that blessing locked in. And Jacob's like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And so he goes and he gets a goat and he kills the goat and he brings it to Mom, and Mom cooks it up, and she says, we're even going to take the hide and we're going to put that hide on you, because Jacob realizes Dad's going to know it's not me. I mean, Esau's like a carpet. He's going to reach out and touch me and know that it's not me. She's like, I got that all worked out. We'll put this on your arm and you can feel of it and you'll know. Dad will think it's your brother. And so let's just look and see how comfortable Jacob is with his lying. Genesis chapter 27, verse 17. I should have said this earlier. I'm reading out of the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible. The reason why I chose to do that is to make it difficult for you to follow along. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't do that. I did it because I like the story. It's got a storytelling kind of vibe to it, and this is a storytelling kind of day, so that's why I did that. So Genesis chapter 27, verse 17. She handed the delicious food and the bread she had made to her son, Jacob. When he came to his father, he said, my father. And he answered, here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob replied to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. Lie. I have done as you told me. Lie. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may bless me. What? He just lied 3 times. But Isaac said to his son, how did you get it so quickly? I just asked you, did you walk out and the deer just walk up to you? How did that happen? And Isaac said to Jacob, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. How'd you ever find it so quickly, my son? He replied, because the Lord your God made it happen for me. Ooh, you just drug God into this? I mean, I would not want to do that. Not only is he lying bold-faced to his dying father, he brings God into this. Oh, well, God just blessed me. Okay. That's how you want to play. Then Isaac said to Jacob, come closer so I can touch you, my son. Are you really my son Esau or not? Dad knows something's up. So Jacob came closer to his father Isaac, and when he touched him, he said, this voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he blessed him. And again he asked, it's done now. Are you really my son Esau? He's already got the blessing now. He's already gotten it. And he replied, I am. Lie. Bring it closer to me and let me eat some of my son's game so that I can bless you. Jacob brought it closer. He ate. He brought him wine and he drank. Somewhere back down the road, this blessing was supposed to be a good thing. God doesn't bless us to cause us trouble. He blesses us to bless us. And what we know about the blessings of God is when we receive a blessing for God, it is not just for my benefit. I receive a blessing from God so that I can in turn take it and bless others with it. That's what's so cool about the blessings of God. They multiply in effect. And so Jacob is thinking about this blessing, and he wants this blessing, and he wants it so bad that he is just crunching everything under his wheels to get it. And he's running over everybody and everything that's in his way. And here he is, lying to his dad, dragging God through the mud in the middle of it, all to get a hold of this blessing. And look at how much damage it does. Verse 33. Isaac begins to tremble uncontrollably. He's just figured out that his son lied to him and that the blessing went to Jacob instead of Esau. Who was it then, he said, who hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it all before you came in. He's talking to Esau. And I blessed him, and he's going to be blessed. And when Esau heard his father's words, he cried out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me too. Bless me too, father. But he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. So he said, this is Esau talking, isn't he rightly named Jacob? Isn't he the supplanter? Isn't he the heel grabber who I've never been able to shake off in my whole life? For he has cheated me twice now. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. And he said, haven't you saved a blessing for me? And Isaac answered Esau, look, I made him a master over you. I've given him all of the relatives as his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. What can I do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, do you only have one blessing? Bless me too. And he weeps bitterly. I mean, this is heartbreak. This is real brokenness that Jacob has caused. And in the meantime, what is Jacob doing? He's getting out of town. He knows what a mess he's made. He got what he wanted, and now he's going to cut and run. Heroes of the faith. Why is this in the Bible? Like, what am I supposed to think about this? When we read this in like Sunday school class or something, like, what am I supposed to take away from this? Jacob tricks, schemes, lies, cheats, and gets the blessing from God? Is that what God wants us to do? Lie and cheat and steal and connive to get it? Should I, if I've been praying really hard for a promotion at work and I get the opportunity to throw my coworker under the bus, that's what Jacob would do? Is that what I should do? When I get the opportunity, there's somebody who I'd really like to date and they're dating somebody else, and then I hear them running that like complaining a little bit, and so I take the opportunity to run that person down and drive them in the dirt and drag them through the mud so that they'll think worse of them and everybody in town will think worse of them, and we can post nasty stuff about them on our social media profiles so that's what Jacob would do. Is that what I should do? I mean, it doesn't seem right, but I mean, it's in the Bible. Okay, well, you got to read the whole story and see how it goes, because it's not a hero thing. If you didn't know that the Bible stories are not always hero stories, give Samson a read. I mean, nothing that guy does is right. He goes down doing the wrong thing. You know, the Bible's not full of heroes, it's full of humans, broken people who make mistakes, who God bails out all the time. Genesis chapter 27, verse 41, Esau held a grudge against Jacob. I can see why. Because of the blessing his father had given him. And Esau determined in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are approaching. Dad's not long for this world. We'll be peaceable. And when Dad's gone, I'm going to kill my brother Jacob. So we have to back up again and say, what was on his mind day in and day out all the time? It had to be that blessing. It was the inheritance. It was the stuff. He wanted the stuff. He wanted the land and he wanted the goats. He was lying and cheating and stealing to get some goats because they didn't have iPhones back then. So that's what you had to fight over, goats. How ridiculous is it to throw your whole family in the trash heap to get to get some land and some goats. But I mean, fill in the blank with whatever cool new thing there is out there in the world today that people are after, and it's not any different. It seems ridiculous in hindsight. We can look back on the past and say people were fighting over that. There was a time in world history where people were killing each other over tulip bulbs. That's a thing. It was a flash in the pan. They were really valuable for a little while, and then they were gone again. Like, what stupid stuff is that? Well, that's people. People just do crazy things. So it was the stuff. And here's the weird thing. God wanted to give him the stuff. God wanted to give him the stuff. If your kids, you want to give your kids gifts, right? You want to do that. And if you got a Christmas present bought for your kids, and you've got it hid in the closet somewhere or something, you want them to get it. But you don't want them to get it by digging around in the closet and finding it. You want to give it to them when you wanted to give it to them. That's all the effect. That's part of it. It means more when you get it in real time, not when you go digging through the closet and find it. It sucks all the fun out of it. It sucks all the life out of it to get a present when you're not supposed to get it. I thought in my mind, that little thought, if that pops up, I can bring up and if Dennis was here, I was going to say something about Santa Claus being totally real, and that's not the gift that we're talking about, but he's not here. So kind of poke at him there, but he's not here for me to poke at. So, we want our kids to get their gifts when we want to give it to them. And God wanted to bless Jacob, but he wanted to do it on his own time. And Jacob's trying to hustle it. And that's something that Abraham did. And it didn't work out good for Abraham. It's not going to work out good for Jacob. So Jacob has to leave town because his brother literally wants to murder him. I mean, we say that. I'm going to murder that guy. He wants to murder him. He wants to kill him. And so Jacob does something that's kind of redeemable. And I think this is what God saw in Jacob all along. Jacob leaves town, and where he decides to go is to his uncle Laban's. Because long time ago, mom and dad told him, don't marry Canaanite women. God said don't do that. The women around here where we live, they're just not godly people. They don't follow God. They worship other gods, and they'll drag your heart away from God. So when it comes time to find a wife, you need to go out of town. And Uncle Laban lives over here, and he's got daughters, and there's some good people over there. When you go looking for a wife, that's where you should go. When Esau went looking for a wife, he went straight to the Canaanite women, and he married more than one of them. Not only did he pile problems on, but he piled them on deep. Might have something to do with why God didn't pick him to receive the blessing in the first place. He wasn't very good at listening. He was going exactly the opposite direction from where he was supposed to go. He was impulsive. Obviously, you don't sell your birthright for a pot of stew if you're not. He was impulsive. He clearly didn't understand how to value things. And he went right against the orders of God and right against the orders of his parents and married people he wasn't supposed to marry and made a mess for himself. Jacob, when faced with the opportunity to get out of town, said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to Uncle Laban's, and I'm going to see if I can meet the right kind of woman, I guess. So that's where he goes. He goes to Uncle Laban's. And of course, when he's there, he meets Rachel and he meets Leah, and he is head over heels for Rachel. But father-in-law attends the same school Jacob attends, and the hoser is about to be the hosee. He's going to get hosed by his father-in-law. So he goes there and he's like, oh man, I love this girl and I want to marry her. And his father-in-law is like, yeah, man, you give me 7 years work and you can marry my daughter. Non-specifically titled, my daughter. And so he's like, okay, yeah, that's a good deal. And so he works 7 years and he gets married. And apparently they covered up real good. Those veils must have been real good in weddings back in the day because he had no idea he was marrying the wrong girl. And he flips the veil up and he's like, what? Whoop, 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 switch, right? He got the wrong girl. He married the older daughter. He married Leah instead of Rachel. And he's like, what did you do to me, man? And Laban's like, well, here's the thing. I don't want her to be an old maid. You can marry Rachel. You just got to marry Leah first. And he's like, okay. So he works 7 more years. And he finally gets the girl that he wants. And they're in love. And even though he's being a little punk the whole time. Jacob's such a little punk. God still blesses him. And Laban sees it. Laban's farm is doing better and his animals are being healthier because Jacob's there and the blessing of God is just all over him and just everything he touches is just doing well and it's prospering even though he's being a little punk. It's pretty cool. God decides to bless him anyway. And Laban has recognized it. So he's trying to keep this guy here as long as he possibly can. And so now he's married Rachel, and there's times when he's like, I probably need to get, it's the trick, we do when we're about to leave somebody's house. So somebody said that I've seen this online. Well, better get going, kind of pats his leg and says, well, Laban, I probably better be getting out of here. Got some things to do. And Laban's like, well, but just wait. And he just keeps getting put off, and he keeps getting put off, and he keeps getting put off. Doesn't feel good to be taken advantage of, does it, Jacob? Wonder what that's like. So now he's feeling like he's been taken advantage of. But before he goes, he's like, I'm gonna plan my escape. One night, we're just gonna take off out of here. But I want to take my stuff with me. I want to take my wives and my children and my goats and all my goodies. And so he says, Laban, one of these days, I am gonna have to leave. I mean, not like tomorrow, but one of these days. So I need to have myself set up. And Laban's like, yeah, okay. And so they work out this deal where he'll get all the kind of runty livestock. Not the nice, pretty, white, fleecy goats, but the spotted and streaked and not so handsome looking ones. It's kind of dumb. From my experience, I think all cows probably taste the same. But if you go to livestock auctions, ones that look good just sell better. They do. I mean, even I know when we very first started doing cattle, Dad ran purebred Angus cattle because people like that. When you go to auction and this completely black animal is up there, people will bid higher on it than they do if it's got a white face. And I'll bet you money it tastes the same. But there's something about that white face that just isn't as appealing. We want to see it black all the way over. I see all these cattle people like looking at each other and they're like nodding and they're like tapping each other. I don't know that much about it, but I know that much about it. And so he says, I'll take all the punky ones. And there's this really weird story that comes after this. And if you've read the Bible through and you've read through Genesis and you get to this part, you're probably like, what is this about? You can go back and read it like 5 or 6 times and it still doesn't make sense. But Jacob has this idea that to get all the he's gonna take advantage of Laban because of course he is. That's his way to snidely connive and everything to get what he wants. He's gonna get the best of the livestock. And so he's got this weird plan worked out where he's going to strip the bark off of different kinds of wood and he puts it down in the watering troughs when the animals come up to drink, and somehow that's going to make them conceive and bear spotted lambs. Now, I'm no animal husbandry, animal scientist dude, but I'm pretty sure that does not work. I've read some long articles in studying for this that people trying to say, well, this particular almond wood has this particular vitamin in it, and that could be soluble in the water, and the animals could. I don't think so. Here's what I think. He was bound and determined to try to find some way to get control, because that's the kind of guy that he is. And he's going to try to bend this thing to the way he wants it. But what's funny is, just like every other time before, the blessing had already been promised. And he identifies this in Genesis chapter 31, verse 10. When the flocks were breeding, I saw in a dream that the streaked and spotted and speckled males were mating with the females. In that dream, the angel of God said to me, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, look up and see. All the males are mating with the flocks. They're streaked and spotted and speckled. For I have seen what Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you poured oil on the stone marker and made a solemn vow to me. Get up, leave this land, return to your native land. The reason why the animals bore healthier lambs that were spotted and speckled was not because he peeled bark off of sticks and put it in watering troughs. It was because that's what God wanted to do. God wanted to bless him. God had already chosen to bless him. They made this arrangement for Jacob that was not to his advantage because he was going to get all of the punky critters, and God said, you know what? I'm going to turn that around for you, and I'm going to make sure that you actually, even though you made a bad deal, you're going to get the best of the flock. And Jacob knew that before he schemed up this weird thing for how to do it. He just had it in his mind. He needed to help God make that blessing happen. It's kind of a lack of trust. It's a lack of faith. God said, but. God said, but. God said I would receive this, but it looks like my brother's going to get the blessing instead of me. I think I probably better have a hand in this. I know that, God said he was going to bless me, but I better do something about this livestock thing so that I can get a handle on it. He didn't have to do that. God had already given him the blessing. So we'll take a quick review here. Jacob is born under a very specific promise that he would be the leader and he would get the blessing. But despite this, he took advantage of his brother to get it. He tricked his dying father into blessing him again, and then he skipped town to go move in with his father-in-law. His father-in-law rips him off, so he in turn rips his father-in-law off back at him. And then now he is plotting, taking all of his family and gathering them up and escaping in the night and not just ripping this family apart, not letting this guy's daughters say goodbye to him, not letting him say goodbye to his grandchildren. And then one day he's just going to wake up and half of his stuff is going to be gone. That's his plan. Now Jacob is going to bed the night before the whole plot winds up. I'm talking from the book of Nap here, okay? This isn't in the Bible, but you got to think this is what happens. The day before, he knows what day he's going to head out. He knows. He's already got it planned. It takes planning to take off with wives and children and critters and all this stuff. It's going to take a lot of planning. And so the day before, he goes to bed and he's thinking, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I got to pack this. I've got to tie this up. I've got to have all this ready because we got to get out of here just right at 11 o'clock at night because Laban will go to bed and I got to do this thing. Okay. But God said go home. When I go home, I know what's waiting for me there. Because see, it's been decades since he's been home. And as he's sitting there thinking about it, Dad's gone. Dad was almost gone when I left, so I know Dad's gone. Mom's probably gone by now. I've been gone long enough. Mom's probably gone. My brother, when I left, wants to kill me. He probably still does. And don't you know, every day, as Jacob is out doing his thing, and maybe he's looking out over the fields and his kids are running around and playing, and he's enjoying that moment. He's having a moment where he's enjoying the blessings that God has given him. And then there's this pain, this guts thing that we've all had when we have that thought that comes up that is an uncomfortable thought that we don't like to think about. I worry a lot about things I can't control that I'm responsible for. I don't worry about things I can't control that I'm not responsible for because what's going to happen is going to happen. I don't worry about that. But I'm in charge of homecoming and it worries me to no end because I can't control it. I can't decide who shows up, who doesn't show up. I can't make the parade happen the right way. There's so many things I can't control and I worry about it. And as soon as August rolls around, I have these little panic dreams where I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm like, homecoming. Oh, it's like looming over me like a dark specter. Oh man, it drives me crazy. And it's not even that bad. It's not even that much work, but it worries me. Don't you know there's those moments where Jacob's out and he's just looking, his kids are playing. He's like, oh man, oh, my brother's at home and he wants to kill me and I haven't forgotten about that. You can't forget about that kind of stuff. And now it is the night before he's going to take off and take his whole family, and he is caught between a situation that he can no longer tolerate and a future he cannot walk into without just total terror. And that's a pretty rough place to be. And maybe you've been there before. You can no longer stand this untenable situation, but what you have to walk forward into is terrifying. Especially if it's your own doing. The reason why it's terrifying is because you made a mess, and you're going to have to walk into it. And that's where he's at. We have to ask ourselves in those moments where we find ourselves feeling trapped, did I put myself here? If you didn't, if you're in a tough situation because life just dealt you a tough situation, it's pretty easy, hopefully, that you have the faith that you can lean back and say, I've done all I can do. God, I'm trusting you, man. I don't know what I'm walking into tomorrow, but I know you've got it. But it's a whole other thing if you made the mess, because you got to wonder then, God, do I have to pay for this? I know you're going to take me through it, but because I made the mess, is it going to hurt me? Not because God's trying to torture you, because God's trying to teach you. He'll take you through it, but it might cost you something. And so he's got to worry about that because he couldn't just let God do it. So he's staring down the barrel of a deadly reunion with his brother. Now, God said to Jacob, take your stuff and go home. And the good thing about him, man, for all of Jacob's faults, he is a pretty obedient guy. He did what his mommy and daddy told him to do. They said, God said, marry women from here. And that's exactly what he did. And when God woke him up in the night and said, you got to go home, kid. Okay, I'll do it. He knows what he's facing. He knows it's a mess that he made. And he knows God's calling him to walk right into it. And he says, I'll do it. And so he packs up his stuff and he leaves. I'm going to say God probably wasn't saying rip the family away in the middle of the night and don't tell anybody you're leaving, because that didn't go so well. But that's another story. We won't go into that. So Jacob heads off. And then, because he's Jacob, he has to hedge his bets. He can't just trust God to take him through it. So he's got gifts prepared. And I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of gifts. He's got animals and stuff and precious things. And he's just going to march this stuff in waves over his brother. Because he's thinking, my brother's going to see me coming and he's going to be coming mad. And he's going to amass the army. And they're going to come marching toward me. And I'm going to see him coming. But I'm going to win him over. I'm going to win him over. I'm going to bum rush him with all the free stuff. Presents and presents and presents. And by the time the last wave of presents has washed over him, he'll forget how mad he is and he won't kill me. That's his plan. And so he's got it all ready and he's got it all arranged. And he's even got his own possessions and his own wives and children split into groups so that if the attack comes, at least some of them can run off and get away and not die because he's that worried. Can you imagine making a plan so that at least half of your children will survive tomorrow? This dude is sick. He is sick with worry out of a situation he made. He made it. And that night, he has a visitor. Genesis chapter 32, verse 24. Jacob was all alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. How does that happen? How did that get started is what I want to know. Like, how did they get in the fight in the first? I don't understand. When the man saw he could not defeat him, he struck Jacob's hip socket as they wrestled and dislocated his hip. And he said to Jacob, let me go, for it's daybreak. And Jacob said, I'm not going to let you go unless you bless me. Oh my goodness gracious. He just will not turn loose. For the 100th time, can you please secure me a blessing from God in writing? Triple signature, please. Bless me. What is your name? The man asked. Jacob, he replied. Your name's not going to be Jacob anymore, he said. It'll be Israel, because you've struggled with God and with men, and you've prevailed. And Jacob asked, tell me your name. But he answered, why do you ask my name? And he blessed him there. Jacob then named the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared. He's still, even in the moment where he is facing, like in his mind, certain death, he cannot let go of needing to secure, signed in triplicate, this blessing. It is all he is thinking about. God literally has to break him to get his attention. God knew when he sent that angel down, they were going to have to fight. He physically fought an angel over this. And the angel goes, don't you know that hurt? Having his hip popped out of socket? Oh, and it actually says after that, he walked with a limp. I mean, this was permanent damage done. And God finally said, will you let me bless you now? Not without a fight. What? That's the title of the message right there. Can I just bless you? Not without a fight. Oh, you can bless me, God, but I'm going to do it my way. And I'm going to fight and battle it. And I'm going to get it the way I want it, when I want it, on my time. God doesn't do anything on my time. He does it on his time. He gets Jacob down and he literally dislocates his hip. And Jacob finally says, I tap out. God said, thank you. You can be blessed now. And you know what? After that, Jacob got up and he ran to go meet his brother. He ran to go meet his brother. Legit, he did. Look at what happens. I cried a little bit reading this, thinking about it. Genesis chapter 33, verse 4. He sees Esau off in the distance. And I don't know if he's on a camel or a donkey or a horse or what. I don't know what it is, but he's coming and he might be mad. Esau runs to meet him, hugs him, throws his arm around him and kissed him. And they wept. And Esau looked up and saw all the women and children. He said, who is all this with you? And he said, the children God's graciously given, your servant, your servant. He's finally been humbled. God had to break his leg to do it, but he's humbled now. And the slaves and their children approached him and bowed down. Leah and her children, Joseph and Rachel approached and bowed down. And Esau said, what did you mean by this whole procession I met? What's with all the stuff? There's been just waves of stuff coming. Animals and gifts and rare herbs and wood. What is all this stuff? What do you mean by all this? To find favor with you, my Lord, he answered. I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have. Jacob wanted that blessing so bad. He made himself so miserable. And he was worried about something he need not be worried about. God had it all taken care of from day one. He was worried about a mess that wasn't even there. He missed the last years with his dad. He missed the last years with his mom. He woke up how many nights in a panic sweat over this thing that he was doing, and he still couldn't turn loose of it. And now when he's really faced with it, and God finally breaks him down, and he just takes the blessing God had been promising him all along. Guys, you know what? This is really where the message is at, right here. The blessing was never the stuff. The blessing was the peace. The blessing was the rest. The blessing was knowing God has this, I can relax. When God promises you something, he's going to do it. And that's not to say we don't have to work for God. We do work for God. It's not a license to just be lazy. But God says like 1,000,000 times over in the Bible, rest, 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 sleep, rest. Have a party, have a festival. The Jews had a festival like every month. It was like Christmas every 25 days for the Hebrew people because God wanted them to rest and party and have joy and be reminded of how good God was and how he delivered them through stuff. And he's constantly having to tell people, you don't have to work so hard. Let me bless you. Will you stop and let me bless you? And the blessing we receive is probably not what we're after. It might not be. You know, here's the thing. Jacob got the blessing. He got to receive the land, okay? He did. But everything from the moment God broke him and he finally changed his heart, everything from there was not all sunshine and lollipops. The next story is that his daughter was raped. That's the next thing that happened. And then his own children conspire against each other, and they throw one of his own kids into a ditch and convince him that this child has been killed, and he's just sick about it. His life was not great after this, but I know every time a challenge came up, he said, you know, God delivered me through stuff before, and he's going to deliver me through this. And you know what? God did. There were times when Jacob was miserable. There were times when he was worried to death over his kids. There were times when things were really uncertain and times when things were really bad, and there were things that got broken and never got fixed. But ultimately, God took care of Jacob. And when famine hit the land, he had a place designed for them to go and escape it. God didn't take the famine away, but he took them out of it. I'm telling you this because I honestly believe God has blessings in store for all of us. And a big blessing is to just have faith to know God's got it, whatever it is. Doesn't mean he's going to fix it. He may not fix it. He may drive you straight through it, but he's on the other side of it. Even if the other side of it is the other side. God's got us. He's going to take care of us. We can have peace and rest in that. God maybe has been trying to bless you all this time. But you've been so focused on the blessing and how it's going to work. It never works the way you think it's going to work. This building is a blessing. It did not happen the way we thought it was going to happen. Because it never does. God's way is always better than anything we ever dreamed of. Quit trying to control the situation and just focus on God and do what he's asking you to do. If you do what he's asking you to do, you'll get where you need to go. He doesn't need you messing with it. Trust him, follow him, take his orders, take his directives, do his work, and he'll just line things up. Sometimes you put your foot out and you don't know what, and it appears right underneath your foot. Because that's the way God does. He wants to see you step out in faith. We have a way of making a mess of things if we do it our way. If God wants you to have the promotion, you don't have to throw somebody else under the bus to get it. If God wants you to have the relationship, you don't have to run somebody else down. You just have to follow him and let him do it. You might not get the end you want, the thing you are after, but you'll get something God wants you to have and it'll be better. He will never fail to give us the greatest blessing of all, which is his unwavering presence, his unfathomable grace, unlimited restoration and redemption and love, and that's what it's all about. And that's really what we need to be after. If Jacob would have just been after that from the start, he could have avoided all the rest, and the blessing still would have come, right? I'm going to ask you to stand. Maybe it's not maybe there is a blessing that you've been chasing and you've been going about it the wrong way. Something that I'm a one-track mind guy. I get my mind fixed on something. I can't think about anything else. Maybe that's you. Maybe it's not a blessing. Maybe it's just something that you haven't been able to totally let go of and totally trust God for. I'm here to tell you, God knows your needs. And he knows what's good for you. And he knows what's going to get you where you need to go. And that's it. You just rest in that. You just take the opportunity to let go of it and say, I'm not going to be a heel grabber. I'm just going to trust. And so our altars are open, as they always are. And if you want to come up because you don't have that guarantee that God is going to bail you out because you've never put your trust in him, today's the day to do that. If you've got something you're carrying that you just want to turn loose of, God's here for that. You don't have to come to an altar to do that. You can be standing where you're at right now and just pray, God, I get it. You want to take it. You want to make it. You want to line it up for me. Just let him have his way. If you do come up to the altar, we'll have people up here to pray with you and pray for you.